more on these peace talks between the US and Iran. I want to bring in Kamran Bokhari. He's a strategic forecaster and senior resident fellow for the Middle East Policy Council. As we understand it, these talks are expected to start anytime soon. I haven't heard from Islamabad that they are actually underway as of yet, but we do still believe that they are on track. I'm keen to get your thoughts on the state of play in today's talks and how you assess the strength of the respective positions, that of Iran and the US, going into these talks.
Well, thanks for having me, Becky. Look, if the Vice President of the United States went to Islamabad, he didn't do so without some basic understanding that there is a good chance that these talks will succeed. Likewise, you don't have the Speaker of Parliament, who's now the de facto ruler of the country, given the decapitation strikes and the elimination of top leadership. He's there as well. So this suggests to me that both sides are taking this very seriously. Now, that doesn't mean that, these talks will necessarily be successful. I suspect that at the very least, if these talks are to move forward, then something specific has to come out, some baseline understanding has to come out of these talks, which were reported to be both direct in nature and indirect. So not everything is going to be solved today, but it's a start.
You have argued that Pakistan is not just an interlocutor today, but can, and I quote here, shape perceptions on both sides and influence how Washington and Tehran see the process. Can you just expand on that?
Yes. Look, I think that this argument of mine applies a little more to Iran than to the United States, largely because Iran here is the weaker party and has a lot more to lose and is strategically lonely in its environment. And Pakistan is its only bet right now. There aren't any other countries that can effectively mediate with the United States. And that gives the Pakistan a lot of space. And if the 11th hour, agreement to come and meet in Islamabad today is an indication, it does show that the Pakistanis were able to convince the Iranians. And likewise, as this process matures, going from just sort of relaying messages, it gets to a point where, even the Americans say, okay, so what do you think about, the response from the other side? This isn't sort of a mechanical thing. This is an organic process.
That's fascinating. And certainly Pakistan, as a neighbor of Iran, of course, with a significant Shia Muslim population, has a huge interest in this conflict coming to an end and there being some peace around this region. When it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's biggest bargaining chip, you could argue, what, if anything, can loosen its chokehold? Do you assess that the Gulf states, and I'm here in the UAE, could play their trump card, excuse the pun, by refusing to ship any oil, for example, as long as Iran controls the strait?
So I think that the word disruption is probably more apt, because control connotes that there is sort of like a physical, if you will, capability with naval ships to physically blockade the thing. I think what's happening here is that the Iranian ability to fire missiles and drones across the Gulf creates a situation where the strait becomes impassable by commercial ships. But having said that, I think that we're in a new space right now. What was prior to February 28th doesn't exist anymore. First, the unthinkable has happened. Something that used to be a theoretical construct, which is the idea that Iran would attack its energy-rich Gulf Arab neighbors. And now that's create a new reality. And the same applies to the inability of ships to traverse through the strait. So this is something, in my opinion, which is probably going to be the hardest part of this negotiation. I think given past US-Iranian nuclear negotiations, There's a lot more clarity on how, for instance, you can get to zero enrichment. But how do you come up with a situation where Iran, still possessing the capability to fire drones and missiles, will move forward? Likewise, will this happen again where Iran decides to, okay, I need something, and therefore I'm going to go ahead and make the strait impassable again. So this is the most toughest part. How do you physically deal with this? And I think the Gulf states in the long run will try to come up with ways where they reduce dependency on the strait for their energy exports.
The advisor to the UAE president, Anwar Gargash, described to me this past 40 days being the sort of worst case scenario, to your earlier point, when considering sort of, the strategic sort of calculus around this region over the past 2 decades. He said, what we've just seen is the worst case scenario. Now, they also see the UAE as incredibly resilient, resourceful, and will come out of this stronger at the nth degree. But I'm curious for your reaction to our exclusive reporting that China is preparing to send a weapons shipment to Iran. China's denied these claims as sensationalist. But what is your assessment, and how does or would that fit into the delicate balance that China has been striking in this conflict? Gets an incredible amount of oil, of course, from the Strait of Hormuz, and that's been tough, although those tankers have been getting through, cleared by Iran. This is all, of course, ahead of Donald Trump and Xi's expected talks mid-May.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a really interesting report that came out that, the Chinese are supplying weapons. I can see how the Chinese would want to sort of perception shape here and say, hey, look, we have leverage here ahead of the talks with the President of the United States to try and gain leverage. We have to understand what is far more important for China in the current moment. Is supporting Iran its goal, or is its own economic situation, its own political economic situation, and improving that, reaching an understanding with the United States on trade and investments and technology transfer, and just reaching an overall, strategic understanding with the United States? I think that's far more important. And this Iran situation is them trying to buy leverage on that bargaining table. There were reports a few days ago of, potential shipments of sodium perchlorate, which is sort of the precursor material for solid fuel that the Iranians use in making their ballistic missiles. Now, we have to assume that after 12,000 plus airstrikes, the capability of the Iranian regime to build or produce those ballistic missiles in the current moment is not what it used to be. So these are, unclear reports, and I think that there's a sophisticated game being played by the Chinese where they come out and deny it, but they leave the other side hanging on the question of what if. And that creates space for them to negotiate. Well, if their position is, well, if you want us to play ball, then, we have certain asks as well.
And it's interesting, we're having this discussion. I spoke recently to someone who is very well informed on geopolitics, works out of this region. His judgment I respect. And he said to me, be focused on 2 key dates coming up. May the 14th, which of course is the US-China meeting, if that happens, Donald Trump and Xi, and July 4th, of course, 250 years of independence. That will be celebrated in the US. And his point was that will be a key focus for Donald Trump. He will have wanted to leave what is going on here behind him, he said, and focus on, his what he will deem incredible accomplishments in what is an incredibly important year for an America First project. So I think that's just worth noting. Kamran, it's good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, coming up,